Parents, the following program is intended for people over the age of 13. Peter Bernard's Scary Stories for Adults.
Welcome to Scary Stories NYC. I'm your old pal Bigfoot. We've got two all-new Dogman stories for you. This episode is a little late coming out because we redid the second half of the show to include a story I just got in last night that I wanted to get out right away. But first, I'm very excited to announce that we have our first executive producer from Australia, 12 Hats Radio. If you think us Dogman fans are bats, you have not met 12 Hats. They do publicity in Oz, and that's so badass because they're real cool cats. Thank you 12 Hats Radio for joining us on the $7 level and getting access to around 10 hours or more of scary, uncensored Dogman stories and phone calls from you viewers, too real to be presented on this channel. If you'd like to become an ultra cool Scary Stories executive producer like 12 Hats Radio, just join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com or do what 12 Hats did and join our channel members by clicking the join link under this here video. We don't have any stories from Australia today, no Yowie Dogman or anything like that. We do have two water-related Dogman stories though, so let's start off with one of those. I think I'll call it The Pennsylvania Dogman Water Ambush. Dear Scary Stories NYC, since the weather got hot again, I've been wanting to go swimming, but not finding any place I feel safe about going to. I've been spending a lot of time back in my bathtub instead, but it keeps reminding me of a time a couple of years back when my girlfriend and I tried to go swimming at that French Creek pool and boats place in Pennsylvania. It was very crowded, as I guess a lot of other people had the same idea that we did. There was nobody there our own age, only older people and mothers with loud brats who seemed to scream and cry no matter what happened. We can call my girlfriend Chill since she's icy cold to me these days, but she was still warm back then. Chill does not like kids. She doesn't like their noise, their smell, or their attitude. She told me some of the terrible things she claims she did while babysitting that I can't even repeat. I don't know if she was serious about that stuff or not because I can't really tell how crazy people are. I'm just not good at it. I once dated a girl I thought of as quirky for 3 months, who later ended up in a mental facility against her will. I tend to be very forgiving, but the girls I date tend not to be, and Chill was no exception. She demanded that we leave the loud pool at once. I actually admired her ability to change plans on a dime if there were kids around, or old people, or basically almost anyone, because she doesn't like any of us, believe me. Hopewell Lake is right near to the pool. They're side by side, and they rent out boats there, these little kayak kind of things. Well, I guess they're just kayaks, not kayak kinds of things. Bright colored plastic or plexiglass single-person things you steer with an oar. I asked Chill if she would want to do that just to get out on the water and cool down, but we couldn't find the guy who rented the little boats anywhere. We decided since at that time of day we didn't see anyone out on the lake at all, we would take a swim right there. Now, I don't know if that's legal or encouraged, but we were hot and we wanted to swim, and the pool was too crowded with people that we didn't want to share the water with. We jumped into the lake and played around for a while. It felt great to cool off finally. Then she challenged me to a race to a pier they have built over there. I gave her a head start just so I could watch her swim from behind for a few seconds, and then I swam off after her. I didn't catch up till we were about 3/4 of the way there, but after I passed her, something happened that was very simple and very sudden, but it's a little hard for me to explain. I need to slow the story down here, but please remember this stuff all happened so lightning fast that it's still terrifying for me to even think about it. I went from super happy to certain that I was about to get torn to shreds in less than a second. It was a moment in time that traumatized me, and I'm still damaged inside from it. I know I sound weak saying that, but I have to accept that it's true if I want to ever be able to move past it. They tell me it doesn't mean I'm weak just because the sudden shock of a predator attack in the water traumatized me. I would only be weak if I gave up trying to get over it and trying to get better. I also have to accept that it may stay with me for life, even as the trauma has to accept that I will never stop trying to defeat it and leave it back in 2018. So what happened was that as soon as I passed Chill, I looked forward to see how much more I had to swim to be at the pier. Only when I looked, I saw something in between me and that pier. It was something large and brown and in the water, but it did not seem to be an aquatic creature. My internal alarms went off and I stopped in the water, paddling and kicking to keep myself in place and prevent any further forward momentum. I put out my arms at my sides to prevent Chill from passing me until I could understand what was ahead of us and why it seemed to be deliberately blocking our path. With water splashing everywhere, I couldn't focus my eyes on what that was, so I did something that surprises me to this day. I dove down under the water to see what I could make out of it below the surface. I had never done anything like that before. It actually hurt my eyes to open them in the water, but not as much as I guess I had been expecting it to. So, this thing didn't look like a fish, didn't look like a squid, and it seemed to be doing a doggy paddle. Was I looking at someone's escaped pet dog? I rose up out of the water to try to get another glance at it, but when my ears hit the air, they were met by the loud and terrified screaming of my then-girlfriend, Chill. She was shouting at me to get out of the water, and her voice seemed to be receding to my left. Looking over, I saw what I presumed was Chill's wake, as she was now swimming for the shore instead of the pier. Looking back in front of me, I saw the head of the creature, with its dog ears and dog mouth and dog snarl and dog fangs, and yet the eyes that were more than a little bit too intelligent looking. All the pieces finally came together, and I understood. That was not a dog there in front of me, although I admit it was dog-like. It was the Pennsylvania Dogman, and it had been using the pier as a hunting blind. It had been waiting there to ambush us and turn us into his breakfast. Did he do that often? Or was this a reaction to seeing us swimming alone on the lake in the morning? It must have been a once-in-a-lifetime situation, otherwise that park would have been closed years ago, don't you think? We'd have heard of all the aquatic injuries and worse by now, if this were a common occurrence, right? I have to assume that Chill and I were the only people ambushed under that pier. At least I really pray that we were, because we got away. But that, the getting away part, to me that was the scariest part. I swam toward shore. I swam toward my then-girlfriend's screams. And I had no idea the entire time if the Dogman was going to catch me. I couldn't tell if he was right behind me, or if he was pursuing me at all. I just had to put all my effort and attention and energy into swimming toward shore and hope that I would reach there in one piece and get out of this unhurt. I remember feeling a strange sensation that was like utter calmness and complete panic mixed in together. It was kind of like, I have to swim as hard as I can, but it might not be enough. These might be my last few moments. You know, even when we have to exert ourselves to the point of exhaustion, life is still kind of awesome. That's literally the kind of thing I was thinking. I was racing through the water, struggling to get enough air in my lungs to keep going, uncertain if I would live another second or another 50 years. And at the same time, there was a part of me realizing that just being alive in and of itself, even in the worst of times, it's still pretty freaking amazing. I felt so full of gratitude for all I had been given, up to and including what I thought was my final moment on Earth. And yet at the same time, I'd never felt so scared or so sad before. I vowed to always remember that feeling and never take life for granted again if I were allowed to live through this. I got to the shore, and Chill was there to grab me and hug me. I asked her frantically where the monster was, and she said she didn't know. But she stopped mid-sentence to stare at something behind me. I turned, and to my horror, the Dogman, bigger than the biggest bear I had ever seen, but a similar color to a brown bear, pulled itself, dripping wet, out of the water and up onto the end of that long pier. I know we should have run immediately, but we were both still stunned and tired from our first escape, and I don't think moving was quite an option just yet. Besides, our minds both badly needed to understand what it was that we were swimming and running away from. So we watched as this creature climbed onto the pier and stood there on all fours like a bear or a big cat. And then it shook all the water off itself in that back and forth way that dogs do it, with water flying madly to the left and right of it as the creature's fur flew through the air. It was a big dog, not a bear. It was a bear-sized dog, and it was in Pennsylvania. What else could it have been except the Pennsylvania Dogman? I kind of thought while I was in the water that it was the Dogman. I sort of knew it almost from the start, but seeing it in the broad daylight at the end of the pier was still hard to accept. Dogman and werewolves are not supposed to be real, and even the people who believe in them don't claim that they swim around in lakes in the middle of sunny mornings. Not only wasn't anyone going to believe this story, but I wasn't believing it while it was happening. So then the dog looked at us, looking at him, and he got annoyed, to say the least. He stood up on his hind legs, and we both went, whoa. I mean, it was quite an impressive display. This was the alpha male of his tribe, and he had just succeeded in scaring the bejeebus out of the two of us. We stood there, frozen with shock, amazed at this dog that was as large as a bear and could stand upright in the same way bears do. Already, this had been the strangest experience I had ever lived through. Then, it got a whole lot stranger as that upright bear-like dog started walking toward us in a sort of angry way, like a teacher that's storming over to punish you for being bad. It wasn't wobbling over in that funky and silly-looking way that bears walk. It was marching over. It was almost running over. Chill and I booked it, running like monkeys at points, completely panicked and needing to get back to her car before the thing got to us. As we both piled into the vehicle, I could hear that Dogman creature barking, his strange, almost roar-like bark, and I think I must have passed out right there in the passenger seat. Good thing it was Chill's car and not mine, or we might never have gotten out of there. When I came to, I found myself in Chill's arms in the front seat of her car. We were parked somewhere, I forget where, somewhere away from the beach, with plenty of people all around and no monsters. She was telling me that we had escaped the Dogman and that we were safe. I remember holding her and weeping and thanking God or the universe or whoever had decided to allow me to live a little while longer. I swore I'd never lose the deep sense of thankfulness I was feeling in that moment. I really meant it too, but actually Chill and I got into a petty argument before we even got back home. As soon as danger left, we stopped promising things to God and went directly back to being selfish and childish and short-sighted and small. The effect of this very deep experience didn't even take 10 minutes to leave us, but the traumatic elements of the event have still not left me. That was the craziest thing that ever happened, and even as badly shaken up as we were, nobody believed us, and everyone laughed at us. Chill's friends told her to break up with me, that I was making her crazy and a weirdo like I was. I couldn't really argue with them on that point, I guess. They were and are all very boring people, and I still think Chill was more interesting than the others, even if she's now giving me the silent treatment and desperately trying to be as conformist as her dull-witted companions. It's her loss if she wants to be one of the sheep. I know now that's not for me. I spent a couple of minutes being prey, being hunted for my meat, and I didn't like it one bit. If she can go through that and come out behaving obediently like a farm animal, that's her prerogative, but I look at life differently now. I study several different schools of martial arts. I'm more realistic and prepared to engage the world on its own terms. I don't want to become a predator, but I never want to be the prey again either. And that's how my life has changed since. The Pennsylvania Dogman. Water ambush. Yet another strange Dogman lightning story. Dear Scary Stories NYC. My girlfriend, who we can call Rhonda, and I spent most of the recent pandemic quarantined together here in Manhattan. Although we love each other very much, it's been difficult both working from home in our studio apartment for all these months, and it's certainly been a test of our relationship. Rhonda's aunt has decided to go stay in a southern state for the rest of the summer and asked Rhonda and me to come watch her house. We both decided Rhonda should go do it alone since neither of us have had a second by ourselves for months. I would stay at home watching our apartment and cat, and she could go stay at the house. Maybe after we began to miss each other, the cat and I could go out for a weekend visit or something, but initially, we just both craved a little bit of solitude to remember how to think our own thoughts again. It seemed like a good plan at first, but then along came the Dogman to tear our intentions into little bloody pieces. Figuratively speaking, of course, your advertisers should be okay with this story. I'll give you a spoiler right now. Rhonda is still alive and fine. It makes me feel very good to write that, since I think through most of this event, I felt like she might be a goner. Okay, so I was on my balcony and I was watching the clouds in the sky. If you're up high enough, you can see how they move and act differently from how you see them on the ground. You can see the varying heights they reside at and how the wind blows differently depending how high up off the ground it is. I saw that a dark cloud was gathering directly over our apartment building and that a storm seemed to be brewing. And yet, I could see blue skies off in the distance in 3 directions, and I could see patches of light peeking through the clouds in places, like God in an old painting. I decided to call Rhonda and tell her about it, and she kept finishing my sentences for me, saying that was what was going on in Pennsylvania as well. I was very taken aback by that and thought she must not have been listening to me. I wondered if she was reading Facebook while talking to me. It's this thing she does that I find insulting. I instantly regretted wanting to share a moment with this distracted person lost in her shallow social media nonsense. I felt very superior. I told her I was serious. The cloud was only over our building. She said yes, that was what she was experiencing too. And it didn't seem that strange to her since New York City and that house in PA are only 2 or 3 hours of driving apart. I rolled my eyes. She wasn't listening. The cloud is over our building. It doesn't even extend to the east side of the island. It's definitely not the same storm system that would be over your house in Pennsylvania. It's not even the same clouds that are over Brooklyn and Queens. Still, she insisted she had the same weather and that there was nothing strange or interesting about it. I started thinking of ways to end the conversation that she wouldn't take as me trying to end the conversation, when suddenly, blam, lightning struck very close by the building. The light and sound came almost exactly at the same time, so it must have been extremely close by. I started to tell Rhonda what had happened, but she was already telling me the same thing that I was going to say to her. Lightning had crashed down near her and near me at the same exact moment. How could such a thing be possible? Maybe Rhonda wasn't distracted. Maybe there really was a lightning storm over both our building in Manhattan and the house she was watching for her aunt way out somewhere in Pennsylvania. The storm got even crazier both there and here in the city, and the cat ran to hide under the bed. Maybe Rhonda and I should have done the same thing, as that was about when Rhonda started screaming that there was a naked hairy man with a Halloween mask out in her aunt's backyard. I told her to get off the phone and call the cops, but she was frantic and losing her mind with fear. I couldn't even understand what she was saying anymore, and I asked her to slow down. It sounded like she was saying that it was a dog-headed man and that it was trying to get in the house. I was thinking she was seeing a dog looking for shelter from the storm and that she was exaggerating because she was alone and frightened. But she said again, no, it was a man. It was a very tall man. It had a savage, dog-like head, and he was trying to get in the house. I heard glass break and the beginning of Rhonda's scream, and then the line cut off. I thought about calling back, but decided I should call the police instead. I ran over to my laptop to search my email for the one in which she had given me her aunt's address. I took the town name from that email and Googled their local police. I wasn't sure if I was calling the correct station or the next town over, but I figured I'd better just call. Once I got through, I explained the situation, leaving out the parts about the Dogman, just telling them that there was a naked prowler and giving them the address. While we were speaking, thunder came crashing down both in New York and on their end of the phone. "Oh, you're having a summer storm out there as well," noted the police receptionist. I was too worried about Rhonda at that point to really care about weather anomalies any longer. I asked if that address was in her area or if I should be calling someone else, and she said she had already dispatched 2 good men to drive over and ring the doorbell. She said they would call me back when they knew what the situation was, and I hung up. It was 15 or 20 minutes later when I lost my patience and tried calling Rhonda's cell phone. She picked up, and she sounded okay. She said the cops were there and that she would call me back after they left. When she eventually did, I found out that the glass breaking sound was her running into a lamp in her panic and accidentally knocking it and her cell phone to the ground. She thought at the time that the Dogman was breaking in, so she hid herself in the back of a closet in a second-floor bedroom and eventually thought to call the cops on her cell. They were already on their way since I had called already. When the 2 men arrived, just as the rain slowed down and stopped, they searched the grounds and found nobody anywhere. It seemed that the Dogman had come and left with the storm. The weird storm that had a simultaneous twin in Manhattan. Is this something that happens all the time but we just never realize? I mean, if I hadn't been on the phone with Rhonda during the storm, I never would have known it had a twin occurring simultaneously in PA. Is this just nature? Mirror storms? Is this something that happens every day but just goes unnoticed because we can't be in 2 places at the same time? And what the hell did the Dogman have to do with it? Why do I get the feeling that there's a lot more to this story than we mere humans can comprehend? Until I can answer some of my own questions about what just happened, I guess you could just file this story under yet another strange Dogman lightning story. And now, get ready for an all-new, completely uncensored, slightly bloody, an absolutely terrifying new Dogman story. Oh, wait. YouTube won't allow me to tell you stories like that on this channel. If you want to hear that, you're going to have to go to peterbernard.com and sign up for our paid subscribers club. You can choose any price you can afford for a 1-month subscription, and then every weekend, we tell you a story YouTube would never allow us to tell you on this channel. See you this Sunday for an all-new, very scary, completely uncensored Dogman story.